to create the thing that
Oh,
the final product, right? And so yeah, I
so
mean,
putting
so
everything together, everybody follows a certain recipe, but some people follow it a little bit differently,
right,
depending on
yeah, and that's
what their priorities are or something. Or
that's exactly it. Yeah. But in the end, you still get the same thing, right?
right.
And so, I mean, this is the yeah, this is I think one of the things that's really important in order to try to, help people to understand is that it is following a recipe. Um
That's
and
what
that
those positions were for too. Like when Francisco was telling us about the Rasa positions. Isn't that what our focus should be? Like those things that we say we're for, and that we want the community to get those things that we want for them and they want for themselves.
right. But how do they do that? How do they get that?
Right? How do
You get
you
it
get
you
self
get it
determination?
well, you get it through organizing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, this is where I think that there's been over the years in terms of organizing a little bit of a disconnect, right? Yeah, these are things that we want, but nobody's going to give them to us. I mean,
No.
I think everybody, all of us know this at this point, is that you can't give somebody self-determination. You can't give somebody sovereignty, right? You can't give somebody political power. These are things that we have to build within our own community. And the way that we do that is through organizing, right? And so like organizing is a scientific process, right? It's not just something that just happens, Um, organizing, there is an intentionality behind organizing that makes it potent, right? That makes it so that it's able to accomplish certain things. Um, and so like lots of times when we're talking with people, people will sign up to become members, and then the first thing they'll say is, okay, now what do I do?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, now what you do is you go talk to your friend and you get them to sign up, right? I mean, and people are like, well, I don't really see what that accomplishes. But I mean, I think that part of what has become unclear to us as a community is that we are not solo operators, right? Like one person cannot really make change, not lasting systemic change. It requires an organized group of people, usually involved in some sort of an organization that can accomplish that, right? So, like even when we think about other countries that have had profound changes in their political and cultural and economic situations, uh, those don't come from one person, right? They came from large groups of people, mass movements that were able to impact that. So how do we build these mass movements? That's really the question, right? And so one of the ways that we do that is through organizing. So if we're going to organize, what is it that we're organizing around? What is the purpose of bringing all of these people together in this intentional manner? And then how do we do that, right? And so one of the things that we've been going over the last couple of weeks are looking at, like I was saying, building power. I mean, that's the initial conversation that we have to have, right? I mean, the one thing that we understand about our situation as colonized, conquered people, Chicanos, Mexicanos, indigenous descendant people, um, is that we, for all intents and purposes, are powerless in this society. Um, and I mean, it's not really much of a discussion. I mean, all we have to do is turn on the news, and it's very clear that we don't really have the ability to stop any of the things that are happening to us right now, right? Like we can't stop massive deportations. We can't stop the destruction of public education. I mean, there you can go down the list and talk about all the things that we can't stop. Okay. So that can produce, I think, it for a lot of people, an intense sense of helplessness. So the question that we have to ask ourselves is, how do we stop these things, right? And the way that we do stop these things is by developing organization that allows lots of people to give input, to be a part of the work that's happening, right? So like when somebody goes and elects a president of the United States, there are millions of people that work on that campaign. Well, I don't know if it's maybe hundreds of thousands of people that work on that campaign, right? Millions of people that vote. And they do all that because they believe in the system that this process is supposed to represent. What we do through community organizing is build a process that people can believe in. We build a process that allows hundreds of thousands or millions of people to participate in. And so part of, what we're doing, and so as we begin to think about that, and we think about what, last week or the week before we started talking about, what is the wrap, right? So the wrap is the way that we begin to initially have conversations with people. Hey, my name's Ernesto. I noticed that you were looking at, this information. I'm a member of the Raza Unida Party, and I've been with Raza Unida Party for 5 years now. We're organizing. We have hundreds of members in 25 states across the country, and we're trying to build, political power for Raza, right? Is that something that you're interested in? That's a way of starting a conversation with somebody. Um, and everybody's rap will be different, right? But everybody's rap leads to the same thing. We want you to join the party. We want you to become a part of this intentional vehicle that we're building to create political power for people in the United States. So, as we go through, we did the wrap. We talked about this idea of heightening contradictions, how it is that we're able to help people to understand what the issues are by showing them the sort of irreconcilable differences between the different stances, right? And this is a large part where the platform comes in that you were talking about in the beginning. How is it that we explain to people what it is that we believe, or what it is that we want, and what it is that we see, the system that we have around us sort of um, putting forward, right? The kind of common sense of society that we are all very familiar with and that we deal with all the time. So, as we go through and we build these things up, what we're going to talk about today is this thing called the personal visit, right? So, we've had a chance, we've started to build our program. We've given some thought about what power is. We've started taking a look at our rap, like what is it that we're trying to say to people. But what we're going to talk about today is the step beyond the rap, right? So if you're out at a park and you're just kind of like tabling and you're doing different things and you're talking to people and you give them the rap, they sign up. They sign up on the sign up sheet or they become a member, right? What we have to think about is what is the next step after that, and what I mean by that is what is the next step for that person for
Right.
our interaction between us and between them. And
Can I ask
so,
you something though?
yeah,
The
go ahead.
the idea of I met three people at the Cesar Chavez march over there in Visalia last Saturday,
Mhm.
and I believe I told them that if they signed, that we would send them information on La Raza Unida. And one man in particular was pretty interested, and I think he probably will join. And I gave those three names and those three numbers to Hashid, and he said he was going to follow up with them. Um, but when I was talking to them, I was going, should I say? we want you in the party or we need you in the party? Or is there a difference in terms of, I mean, I don't want to sound desperate or anything. I just want to invite them in the best positive way that I can think of. And so I said, there's a lot of things that have been going on for years and years and years in the 50s, the 60s, and we have not been treated fairly as a people. And this is why we need representation. But I just wondered about that. Should I, in the simplistic way, should I say, hey, we really would like you, or we really want you to join, or just not even say that, leave that out,
I
that personal wish.
Yeah, I mean, it's a Olga, that's a great question. It's a good organizing question. Does anybody else on here want to say how it is that they talk to people about this? It's so quiet.
Um, Hi y'all. My name is Jean-Jacques. I'm new to this meeting, but I would want to say I feel the same sentiment to you. I think both come off like that desire to have people there, though saying need can make it seem as though maybe a sense of desperation. I personally use the word need because I feel like there's a forcedness that comes with that. I feel as it's kind of like putting almost the power in their hands. Like you are making this choice. It's no longer a passive action. You have to take a direct action. Want, I feel like can kind of feel like wishy-washy at times. Like, oh, if you can, that'd be cool. I'd
Yeah,
love
yeah,
you to.
yeah. I want to stay away from that.
Hmm.
I'm with Jean-Jacques. I always tell people that we need you to be a part of this. That is why I tell them. And if I get a chance, I tell them you need to be a part of this. You need to be a part of this, right? Like this is important to you, like it's important to me.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, I think it's a balance of those two. They kind of play into each other, but yeah, if you just leave it to want, I absolutely agree with that. Reiterating the need that it's driven by the people. So we want you in, we need you
Yeah.
both. Yeah.
I mean, because ultimately, and I mean, this is between us as we're having this conversation. I mean, if nobody joins, right? I mean, if we go out and we say, hey, we've done all this work and all these things are going on, but nobody joins, I mean, we need to, I mean, we would need to really take that into consideration. You know what I'm saying? Um,
Yeah.
I mean, because maybe what we're then trying to do is not what needs to be done, you know? Um,
When I
but
said that I would send them information, I thought about that later. I said, maybe I should have made the calls instead of giving it to Hashid, even though he asked me for the names because I had a list there of people signing in and stuff. So, I mean, it was only 4 names, but only 3 people left their phone number.
well, I mean, Olga, since you brought it up, I think that you should have made the calls. And not because you talked to them or I mean, but because I mean you and I both know Hashid is very busy.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, busy people tend to over busy themselves. I know this from personal
I'm going to
experience.
do
Over
that
busy
today
themselves.
because I kept a copy for myself. So I'm going to do that today.
Yeah. And Olga, I know you've been doing this a long time and I mean you should give them a call, sister. I think the sooner that we can follow up with people, the better,
Yeah.
and Olga, you can always if you need some advice or anything like that, you can always hit me up too. I'm happy to try to help out. I think that what you and Hashid got going on over there in Fresno is I think it's pretty good.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, it's actually, to tell you the truth, it's kind of one of the bright spots. It's one of the hot spots right now
Mhm.
in terms of like getting out and talking to people and tabling and all of that. So yeah,
Yeah. No, he's energetic. He's
yeah,
he's out there. So
yeah, yeah. Hashid's a hustler. Yeah.
yeah.
So.
We need
Um,
more hustlers.
we do.
Could I could I add something? It just makes me think of, I don't even know where it is that I heard this initially, but that, people don't necessarily join organizations to join the organization, although we want them to, because we do want them to see the value of organization. Um, but people more so join because they join people. They just like we want them. I mean, that
Right.
connection, is made. And so, Olga, if you were able to have a conversation with someone, um, you know, it, it's already in motion. And so the
Yeah.
continuity of that being um, being quick, continuous is important, and not so much, like somebody waiting on somebody else to have to
Right.
make that communication, because in essence they're kind of starting over, and then that's gonna it beyond likely a phone conversation, which is never the same as in person,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I did give him my name. And the last gentleman, I even talked about Chavez Fermin because we had just had that in the Francisco workshop on Wednesday.
Mhm.
So he was surprised and he wanted to learn more. He just seemed really interested in him and his wife both were asking me questions.
Oh, that's really cool. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So,
So
sorry, you guys.
so
So
after the wrap,
well, after we are the initial contact, right? After we're out tabling, we're working on building a presence in the community. We go out, we're talking to people, they sign up. Then what we want to do in fairly short order, if possible, is we want to have what we would call a personal visit with them. And so I'm going to take you through a PowerPoint. It's very short. One second. And then I have a little worksheet that we can do together. I think it's very helpful. The worksheet is also in the email that was sent out today. Um, Yeah. So we're going to talk about the personal visit, right? So the personal visit is this whole idea of building trust, one conversation at a time. Um, in 1997, I went to work for the United Farm Workers. I was running their public action office in Detroit, Michigan. And I was very fortunate that I got to spend a lot of time getting trained by people like Richard Chavez and Dolores Huerta and Artie Rodriguez, all these people that had been doing this work and building the union this way for, many, many years. Um, and this whole idea of the personal visit and the house meetings, um, I mean, these are all things that I began learning there and have really implemented into my own organizing, over the last, I don't know, 25 years or something, other number that makes me feel incredibly old. Um, so this, so going to going, what is, okay, that's new. I had never seen that before. Um, So what it's also talking about is the one-on-one, right? That's how a lot of organizers talk about the personal visit. They call it a one-on-one. And this is really sort of the basis of the whole thing, right? So you give the rep, you get to know them, you get their name or their phone number, you call them up, right? And you say, hey, really enjoyed talking with you the other day. I'd really like to expand on that conversation. Can we get a coffee? Can we set up a time to meet? There's a lot going on with the Partido, and there are just things I think that you would find very interesting, right? So it's very important to make sure that when you call them to set up these meetings, that you're doing it within the context of the organizing work that's being done. We don't want to give people the wrong impression, like we're, trying to ask them out on a date or whatever. I mean, but we really need to, just sort of like ease into this conversation. You can see on the slide, it says that the personal visit is the bridge between the organizing rep and the house meeting. So, what we'll talk about next week a little bit more is this. Well, actually, we won't next week because I'll be in Albuquerque at the Knox conference. But the week after, we'll talk about the house meeting, right? And it says it's where we take energy from the rap and turn it into action. Okay. It isn't just logistics, it's about connecting one on one, building trust, and laying the groundwork for deeper community engagement. This step is critical because it helps us identify committed hosts, empower them, and ensure they feel supported every step of the way. All right. So as we develop these one-on-ones, or we have these one-on-ones, one of the things that we're able to do as organizers is we're able to see and to be able to gauge, what's the level of commitment, right? So say you have, 10 people sign up and six of them are willing to have a house meeting. I'm not a house meeting. They're willing to meet you for a one-on-one meeting. That's pretty good, right? And so you have what you know now is that these six people are possibly a little more committed than the four people that were like, I don't have time. And it doesn't mean that the four people aren't committed. Maybe they just really didn't have time to do it right then. But you know that these six are somebody that you're going to go and talk to. And so this is where the whole idea of having building a program and power come into. Because what we don't want to do is we don't want to go to the one-on-one meeting and just talk to them about like, how bad things are, right? I mean, everybody knows, most people know that things are bad, right? So our job as organizers isn't to go and just sort of reiterate to them, um, the calamity of the time, right? Or the menace of the moment, right? Our job is to go there and to say to them, our organization is doing this. I think that you should be a part of that, right? Get to know them a little bit. Do they have kids? Do they have grandkids? What sort of work do they do? I mean, this is your moment to just, really sit down and have this conversation and think about how this person fits into, this program or this campaign, right, that we have going on. So the bottom part says, when facing crisis like the proposed deportation of 10 million Mexican immigrants, the stakes are higher than ever. Each personal visit is a chance to remind people that they are not alone and that together we can fight back. These visits set the stage for house meetings where the seeds of organizing take root and grow into a movement, right? So, I mean, this is why we start with power, right? This is why we start with program, and we think about like what is it that the Raza Unida Party does, right? And so in the other programs where we're talking about what is the mission of the party, right? And we understand that the mission of the party is number one, to build the party. That is the very first thing that as members of the Partido Nacional de la Raza Unida that we have to keep in mind is that our job is to build the party. And we build the party to build political power. And we build the party to build institutions and processes within our community that people can begin to place their trust in, right? And those are, I mean, there's other words for those, but most people call them like dual power institutions, right? So we're trying to figure this out. And let's face it, we're kind of starting at like -3, okay? And so we got a long ways to go, and we're gonna make a lot of mistakes, and we got a lot of things that we need to figure out, but that's all right. We're gonna figure those things out, and we're gonna make those mistakes, and we're gonna get a lot of it right too at the same time. So as we look through this, what we understand is that we've met them, we're having this meeting, we know that there are steps beyond this, right? And so each one of these steps that we take these people through is a step that brings them more in line with what we have going on with the partido, but also helps them to be able to understand the necessity of growing the partido, right? So we go through the one-on-one, and this is what it looks like. And because it's an intentional conversation, there is a somewhat of a framework for it. So like every conversation is going to be a little bit different, but these are the points that we want to hit. We want to introduce ourselves, let them introduce themselves, express gratitude for them being there. Begin by thanking the individual for taking the time to meet with you. I'm really glad that you were able to come here today. It is your willingness to listen and uh, be a part of this conversation, and as a result consider how to take action is so important. It's very encouraging to me. um I'm excited about this. And then you present to them the urgent situation, right? What is the thing that we're working on, that you're working on in the area that you're in? I mean, because other than building the party, every area, every city, every state, right? They're all going to have something that's slightly different that they're working on. And that's fine, right? Because what we have to do is figure out how to tailor the organizing message to the locality so that we are able to bring members in and as a result build a national network, right? I mean, that's really what it boils down to. And we do that by understanding that even though the situations are the same, not the same, that they're similar under colonialism, that different areas have different needs, right? So we're going to clearly explain the issue, the deportation plan targeting 10 million Mexicans and its devastating impact on families and communities. Okay. So we're going to start talking to them about that. People have a lot of things to say about that, right? So we're going to share a personal story or local examples to make the crisis feel immediate and relatable. This is very important, right? The sort of personal story, right? I mean, this is in a lot of ways the foundation of organizing. We have to figure out how to make it um, relatable to them. People, I mean, if you go to somebody and you say, rent went up by across the country by 30% last month. I mean, I'm not really sure what that means, right? But if you go to somebody and you say, I'm paying $500 more now than I was 3 years ago for rent, well, they get that, right? They'll understand that in a flash because that's probably their experience too. I don't know what 30% is. I mean, like I don't know what that means, but I know what $500 extra a month means, right? So how is it that we begin to talk about people? How do we make the stories personable? How do we make them relatable? And then once we talk about, or after we've presented the situation, right, then we talk about or explain the solution. Okay, how is it that we think that we can solve this, right? So we talk about the importance of grassroots organizing, explain how house meetings are a powerful way to educate, mobilize, and build collective action. Okay, so one of the things that I learned, and I think that this is, it's important. um History books or movies or whatever, for entertainment purposes, or yeah, I mean, for entertainment purposes, right? I mean, they really tend to focus on the highlights, what I call the Hollywood moment, right? Where 10,000 people appear in front of the US Capitol and, you know, uh, I don't know, demand something, right? That's the Hollywood moment. What they skip is the previous 10 years of organizing and building and having house meetings where you are drudging through, endless hours of just talking to people, right? I mean, when we think about things like the voting rights movement in the South during the 50s and the 60s, what we understand is that there were a number of organizations that were working on that. One of the ones that I think is probably the most important is the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC, and the work that they did, right? Just going out and meeting people in their homes to educate and to mobilize to build collective action. I mean, this is how this gets done. This is how we build the party. This is how we make this change. Go ahead, Veronica.
Yeah, so I have a question here. And I absolutely see the importance of the house meetings, but just wanted to ask, like, for clarity purposes, um, the house meetings, and I'm just thinking about when we're out talking to people. Sometimes it's we're meeting at, they already have an organization that they're working with, and that's where we're meeting. Is it interchangeable, or is there like is there a specific strategy to doing the house meetings? Does it matter where?
Yes.
Okay,
The answer is yes to all of the questions that you just asked, and I'll go through them here real quick, or I
okay.
mean I'll go through them. House meetings take place in houses,
Mhm.
and I'm not trying to be funny when I say that. I
Right,
think
right.
that
Yeah, no, in
yeah,
somebody's home. Yes,
in
yes.
somebody's home. I think that that's super important, right? The other thing is that house meetings are usually anywhere from 5 to 8 people.
Mm-hmm.
In my opinion, and in the opinion of the people that I learned how to do this from, once you get over 8 people, you got too many people because
Yeah,
you can't really have the kind of conversation that you need to have, right?
the more intimate type
That's
conversation.
that's right. Actually, to tell you the truth, I would say anywhere from 3 to 5 people is like prime, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Because then no one can escape you, right? Like everybody's there, everybody can look in each other's eyes, right? There's no way to fade away, you know what I'm saying, into the background or whatever. I mean, it's yeah, that part I think is super important. When you go to I think the thing that's really also important about this is that um I know that we've had this conversation on the Central Committee a lot, and I think it's one that's starting to drift down, or not drift down, but sort of trickle down, into the membership a little bit, although I think we should be a little bit more clear about it, is that organizationally, I mean, we will accept anyone, right? Because we're building a mass movement. Um, and so I think going to other organizations, I think, somehow, however we do it, we need to make it clear to them that we're not here to take their members.
Mm-hmm.
We're not
Mm-hmm.
here to raid their cadre. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
That's
Yes,
just
yes.
that's just not what we're here for. What we're here for is to talk about the deportation of 10 million, migrants, right? And what we're here to talk about, at least in the context of this presentation, right? And that what we're here to talk about is, how do we stop that, right? Um, and or how do we begin to build back against it? And I mean, I think knowing your rights and red cards and all of that are super
Mm-hmm.
important, but I mean, I am unconvinced that those things build mass movements. I just am. I think that you're teaching a lot of people how to respond to authority, which I think is super important. I think you're teaching them what their Fourth and Fifth Amendment rights are, which I think is
Mm-hmm.
super important, right? Um, but I mean, really, all they're doing in that particular sense is exercising their rights as American citizens. I mean, that's really what that's about. It's about exercising your right as an American, as a human being, citizen. That's not really about building long-term power within society. And I mean, if it was, then I don't think that we would be in the situation that we're in right now because people have been doing that for a very long time, right?
Yeah.
So,
So
oh,
for
go ahead.
Well,
purposes of this part of the training is that if I'm understanding correctly, is that we really are trying to connect on a deeper level
Yes,
with people, and just kind of having absolutely, so when somebody opens the doors to their home to you, it is a different interaction than meeting with somebody at a place of business,
that's
right?
right. Yes.
Um, and so even just with the cultura, and the way that we interact with each other, it's just it's a deeper engagement, it's a deeper conversation, it's a deeper connection all the way around. And so I just wanted to just kind of expound on that part. That's good. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. Olga, you were going to say something?
yeah, that number doesn't really matter, does it? I mean, if you go to a house and you're expecting 8 people, but 3 people show up, you're still going to talk to those 3 people. You're not going to say, "Hey, well, come back later," right? You're going to
Oh,
say
yeah.
what you're going to say to those 3 people because they took the time and they came to that house, and the host prepared the room, the meeting room, and so I think it's important for us. And this thing about the deeper level, time is of the essence, and I'm a talker. I can talk about people about anything, and I can even get all their info, just their history, even because they find it easy to talk to me. But I don't want to know their daily routine. I just want them to think about and maybe sign up to be part of a solution,
Uh,
the party.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to approach this. I mean, you're going to do the house meeting with whoever shows up, right? I
Right.
mean, that's just, yeah. And I mean, the way that I was taught is if you set up a house meeting and this person says that, these people are going to come and nobody comes, then, you spend that time calling those people and trying to get them to come to the house meeting. Um, that's I mean, yeah, absolutely, 100%. Doesn't it, it's not about numbers. I mean, this in some way this is not a numbers game, right? It's not like how many people do you have coming through the house meeting or um, anything like that. I mean, it's the fact that we're having them, right? So when you get to step number 3 in the next part of the conversation, what you're going to do is you're going to make the ask. Okay. So one of the things that we have talked about, one second, you guys. You're gonna have to give me a second. So I can probably eat this in a little bit, but I can't do it right now.
Hey, text me
Okay.
because I'm trying to figure out that salt thing.
Okay. Um, like we've talked about in terms of all of the other presentations that we've done or any of the conversations that we've had in organizing, that the the uh basic component of organizing is making the ask, right? We don't want to just go have conversations with people and tell them something. That is not the purpose of the conversation that we're having. The purpose of the conversation that we're having is to ask them to do something, right? To participate in some event or something that is happening. And so there always has to be an ask. There should always be an ask. At the table, you ask them to sign up, right? Or something like that. And then when you get to this, and you ask them to have a one-on-one meeting with you. And then when you get to the one-on-one meeting, you're going to ask them to host a house meeting, right? So ask them to host a house meeting, emphasizing how their participation can make a difference. Reassure them it's a manageable commitment. All right. When you ask somebody to have a house meeting, and maybe they might even, volunteer. Lots of times people will say, oh, yeah, I can get like 20 or 30 people to come. We don't want 20 or 30 people to come. We want between 5 and 8 people to come. That's it, right? And so when we get them, we get that set up. It's very manageable. You say this is going to take well, we'll get to we'll move on to provide details, right? So you make the ask, they say that they're willing to do it. And then you explain to them that the meeting will last 1 hour, right? And that it requires only 5 to 8 attendees. Highlight that you'll help them every step of the way, including preparing talking points and reminders. So the real the reality of that is that in the beginning, you'll be the one that will be um, facilitating the house meetings, right? And then hopefully the people that we're working with, they will eventually get to the point where they will be facilitating their house meetings. Now, when you go to the house meeting, there are 3 things that that have to happen at every house meeting. There's I guess there's 4. One, you give the presentation. That's the thing, the main thing that you do. And then when that's over, you're going to make another ask of each one of the people attending. You're going to either ask them to have a house meeting of their own, or you are going to ask them for the names of people that they think would be willing or interested in talking about this, or you're going to ask them to donate to the party. One of those 3 things will happen before the end of the house meeting or by the end of the house meeting. You don't need to tell the person that you're doing this with. I'm just telling you as the organizers, right? So you begin to also understand like kind of like what's happening in terms of the campaign that's being built. And then before you leave, you schedule the meeting. Because I can tell you that if you don't get a date right then, you're probably not going to have a house meeting. Any questions about that? Okay. So here's some helpful tips to prepare for your next one-on-one. Be on time. Very important. Uh, yeah, be on time. Know the goals and structures of your campaign and be ready to explain it. Context will help your potential volunteer better understand how they can help you, right? I wouldn't start trying to have meetings like this with anybody until we had the campaign planned out, or at least we knew what it was that we were going for. Because people they're gonna have questions. Have a list of questions ready to go for your potential volunteer. What brought you into this campaign? Have you volunteered on other campaigns before? It's really a get to know you session. And then brainstorm what questions they might have for you and come prepared with answers. Lots of questions have to do with policy, right? Um, Others have to come do with like I was saying, the upcoming goals of the campaign. In my experience in the last 5 years, most of those questions will center on what exactly it is that the Partido Nacional is doing. And, so the more that we understand about the party itself, right? And the structure of the party and the way the party runs. What is the central committee? What is the Consejo Nacional? How are the states divided up? Uh, what happens on the local level? I mean, all of these things people want to know. They want to know how the organization works. And fortunately, we have answers for those things. So be encouraging, right? Instill confidence in your organizers, right? Um, and you all know how to do that. You have to let people know that they're capable and that they're valued. Follow up. You cannot just set a date and then not talk to that person again until that date, because I guarantee you that when you show up, there will be no one there. Um, so you have to check in regularly, keep people motivated, um, and then you have to be able to offer support of some type. Um, yeah, in terms of brainstorming who's going to attend, and then also being willing maybe to help make some phone calls. And I know that lots of people rely almost exclusively on social media. And when I say social media, I also include email in that. Um, but this is a situation where you're gonna have to call people. You need to talk to them, right? That's super important. And so this is it says examples of personal visit wraps. I think these are kind of simplistic, but I mean I think they're a good start. This one would be like if you were a student, Metcha student. Thank you for meeting with me. I want to talk to you about something urgent. The government's plan to deport 10 million Mexicans is tearing families apart and threatening our communities. Mecha is organizing house meetings to educate and mobilize people. We need voices like yours to make a difference. Would you be willing to host a meeting at your home? It's just 5 to 8 people, 1 hour, and we'll support you every step of the way. Can we set a date? And then one for Rasunita. Thanks for taking the time to meet. We're facing a crisis, the proposed deportation of 10 million of our people. This isn't just an attack on immigrants, it's an attack on all of us. The Raza Unida Party is building resistance through house meetings, where we educate our neighbors and build power together. Would you host one? I'll work with you to make it easy, and it only takes an hour. Can we plan for this week? So these are so as you know, so as we begin to build through uh and we start looking at the different sorts of uh steps within the organizing campaign, um you know, it helps us one, I think, to get a little bit of confidence in terms of how it is that we're going to reach out to other people. And that confidence is built through, intentionality, right? Like we are intentionally thinking about how to make conversations with other people, right? What is it that we're going to talk about? And how are we going to talk to them about it? How are we going to get more people involved? So if you're alone in your locale, it doesn't matter what city you're in or what state you're in. I mean, if you're the only person that has signed up for the Partido Nacional in the area that you're in, then it's very simple. You know, even though it might not feel simple, you go and find one other person that you can talk to. Maybe it could be somebody that like your best friend or an aunt or an uncle, or your brother, your sister. Sorry, you guys. And you have that conversation with them. You start it off. I just joined the Rasu Anita party, and I'm really excited about some of the things that they're talking about and that are, some of the things that are going on. And I want to come and talk to you about it. Can I come over? Right. And then you go over there and then you give them the wrap and you say, hey, let's invite 3 or 4 people to come over, and we'll do this together. And then you build from there. And as you get people coming in, you have a chance to talk about what it is that, is being proposed, but you also have a chance of uh, signing them up as members, right? And I think it's important to remember that it takes 5 people in a city to start a city chapter. Um, and then we, begin to work from there. It's once the city chapters come online and the state chapters come online, then we're able to help each other more and be on each other's radar more. But growing the party is simple. We just have to go out and talk to people. If you think about all the conversations that you have within the course of a week, right? Um, I mean, you just have to make this one of those conversations. Any questions so far?
Nope,
Okay.
this is good.
All right, let's practice this a little bit. We're gonna take a look at the worksheet. Um, I think this part's kind of fun. Let me see here. Do, 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 do. So this worksheet has a little bit of a it has a what do you call it? Let me close this. Has a scenario that goes along with it. I'm not really sure what's happening right this second. Okay, here we go. Um, and so we'll read the scenario and then I think kind of go through the prompts, which gives a chance to really think about what's happening here. So view, let me see. That should hopefully that makes it big enough for everybody to see. Um, does somebody want to read the scenario for us?
I can read it.
Okay.
Okay, it says the Partido Nacional de la Raza Unida is on the move. Across the country, PNLRU chapters are rising up to demand what has too long been denied. Chicano studies in every school, every district, every community. For generations, our history has been erased. Our heroes are forgotten. Our contributions ignored. But the silence ends now. PNLRU is launching a coordinated campaign for Chicano studies. In cities, barrios, and pueblos from coast to coast, local chapters are organizing. We're holding meetings, building leadership, and mapping out demands. But to win, we need more than strategy. We need people. We need you. To build the power necessary to win, we are organizing one-on-one visits and house meetings, intimate gatherings where people share their stories, learn their history, and prepare to fight back. Each conversation starts with a personal visit, a face-to-face conversation where we invite someone to host a house meeting. These house meetings are where the struggle begins, where community members come together to envision a new educational future rooted in truth, identity, and injustice. We are calling on every PNLRU chapter to knock on doors, make those visits, and have that conversation. That is how we build our movement.
All right. Okay. So we're going to use this worksheet to create an organizing wrap, a short, powerful message to deliver during a personal visit. This wrap should, one, explain why Chicano studies is critical, make the issue feel personal and urgent, invite someone to host a house meeting. Okay, so step one in all of this is to identify your core message. All right, what issue is your wrap focused on? All right, so we're going to focus on, well, I don't know, what do you guys want to focus on? It doesn't have to be on Chicano studies. Does somebody want to build one for the area that they're in? We can all do it together.
Would this be kind of like, I mean, I know we talked majorly about the mass deportations. Are we trying to make that more of like a local independent kind of like problem, or is it something like more personal to like, oh, this is what's happening to me in Long Beach type thing?
I mean, let's do Long Beach. That's
Okay.
fine. So Jean-Jacques, if you were going to um think about starting like a campaign, some sort of campaign that ultimately the focus or the thing is to boost PNLR membership, but it's not explicitly stated that way. What would you build a campaign around in Long Beach?
Um, I feel like something major here is kind of like food insecurity, like just with other students, I know that like finding meals and stuff can be an issue for them. So I know that that's kind of like something I've talked with others about.
Okay. So, and not surprisingly, I mean, this is food insecurity has everything to do with poverty and which is a constant sort of, I mean, it's an issue that keeps coming back in these conversations, right? People's ability to pay rent, to buy food, I mean, just to, provide for their basic necessities, which I think is really important for us to think about as um partido organizers, right? I mean, a lot of the rhetoric that we hear around land back and Aslan and all these other things. I mean, those things are important, right? They are, but they are not what's driving politics or people's political decisions in 2024. They might be in the back of their mind, but they are not in the front of their mind, right? And so, how do we make the party relevant to the issues that people are facing right now? Food insecurity is huge, right? I mean, it is huge. And I have a feeling, unfortunately, that it's only going to get worse. Um, for a whole bunch of reasons. So we're gonna create a wrap that's focused on food insecurity. Okay. So then the question then, once we do that, is for this particular conversation, who are we speaking to? Right? Who are we speaking to?
Probably families for sure, like groups of like mothers and fathers, young people, people who are unhoused, homeless community members.
Okay. Students, right? All right. It's funny how all of these people seem very different, but are actually not that different in terms of like the issues that they're facing, right? Okay, so food are the issue that we're going to build this campaign around is food insecurity. Okay. Who are we speaking to? We're speaking to families. We're speaking to mothers, fathers, the unhoused, to students. Okay. So when we do this, what is the emotion that we're going for? What are we trying to get people to feel? Or maybe if we're not even really trying to get them to feel it, what are we trying to get them to acknowledge within their own bodies that they're feeling? What do you guys think? I mean, is it legitimate to try to get people to feel angry?
Yeah, I guess is this supposed to be more like a negative or positive emotion that we're getting out of people? Or are we just like connecting on an emotional level, like how they're feeling currently?
It's what you're going for.
My grandson says, I'm hangry.
I'm hangry. That's funny.
Hunger and hangry. Yes. That's
Let's
what we're
do
going for.
let's do this. Let's go for hope. All right. Well, the emotion that we want to stir up is hope. Let's see. We'll take that Obama poster around with us. Hope. Okay. All right. And then our goal for this conversation is a house meeting with 5 to 8 people. Okay. So what we're doing here is we're building the outline of what it is that we're going for. Okay. So instead of just saying, oh, I'm gonna go and we're gonna go talk to some people, right? Which, I mean, and I don't mean this in a disparaging way. I mean, that's the way that the majority of people approach community organizing, we're gonna go talk to some people. We're gonna go do something, right? What are you gonna go do? How are you gonna do it? What are you doing it for? What is it that we're trying to accomplish as a result of you doing this something, right? Um, so what we always have to keep in mind is that organizing is a very scientific process that follows a set of, I don't know if necessarily it's kind of like rules, but it follows these guidelines, right? It's like creating a chemical reaction in a community. Like you just don't throw a whole bunch of shit in the bottle and see what happens, right? You pour a little bit of this, you pour a little bit of that, you shake it around, it turns blue, you know. Um, I mean, this is it, right? We are scientists. We are change scientists. And so we're creating the recipe for that. So as we go through, right? So we think about building your organizing wrap. All right. So we're gonna grab their attention, something bold, real, or moving to open the conversation. What's the first thing we're gonna say to people? Now remember, we've already met them, right? Or we've at least had one conversation with them. This is our second conversation with them. We're talking about food insecurity. How are we opening this conversation?
Can we talk about like just like how much a basic meal has gotten so much more expensive? Like I can't go eat somewhere without spending at least $20, I feel, on myself.
Okay. Can you believe how much a basic meal has gotten? How expensive. I mean, yeah, it's gotten so expensive. Um, I would say this, in both restaurants and grocery stores,
Yeah.
right? What else? What else could we put in here just in this opening piece?
I just I just remember she said that a lot of them were homeless, so they're not going to be able to cook food.
Yeah. I mean, that's actually, Olga, that's a really, really, really good point. I mean, because if you don't have a place to cook your own food, that means that you have to buy it already prepared,
Which
right?
is, yeah,
Which is even more
even more.
expensive. Yeah. Yeah. Um,
Well, if she's talking to homeless people, maybe ask them, do you see the numbers in the people who are waiting to get their allotment, their weekly allotment, or their two or biweekly? You see it, numbers rising more and more. It's harder and harder for you to get food, even free food. I don't know if that's.
no, I think that's really good.
Another piece too is like I'm thinking about some of the people that I work with are on fixed social security incomes. And here more recently, the benefit amounts for like SNAP food benefits has gone down to even $18, $19 a month
Wow.
for a person, which
Wow.
is just insulting, like, what will you do with that? So it's a lot of our retired people, a lot of our disabled people that find themselves in that predicament as well.
Yeah, I have an ex-student who is homebound because of schizophrenia, and he hasn't even gotten his food stamps yet. He usually gets them around this time. He was telling me yesterday.
Yeah, they have a backlog of 60 days. And it's
Oh,
like, yeah, that's what the backlog is right now is 60 days. And then people are not even getting like the required documents that, it'll tell them like their benefits will get cut off and they'll say, well, you didn't submit this when they clearly did. And so for
you know, those of us who are able, to get online, and that way they have proof that they sent it, as opposed to those who don't have access and are having to mail this in or try to get into a place, and can't prove that they actually sent it and have a timestamp on it.
Is that because of less staff to help out with that, or
Um, it,
that
it
people get fired too?
it absolutely is impacted by not having as many people employed. Yes.
So we have this situation, right?
Yeah.
That we it's very clear is impacting people all over the country, right?
Yes.
And it's this issue of food insecurity. So I mean, as we look at like all of these other political parties, I mean, the reality is that I don't see any of these other political parties, and I even mean like the socialist parties. I
Yeah.
don't really hear them talking about issues like food insecurity, right? I hear them talking about like, capitalism as a whole and all of these other things.
Hmm.
But I mean, if we are really de la raza, right? If we are really of the people, then we have to talk about the issues that are facing the people, right?
Right.
If we are the Partido Nacional, I said that in front of a kid the other day at Flagstaff. He's a kid from Mexico. He's a good, nice kid, right? And he looked at me and said, "Is there a national party?" And I said, "Yeah, there is," right? And I mean, because I could tell that that really meant something to him, like when he heard
Hmm.
those two words together. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I was just like, yeah, we start talking about it. The point being that we have the opportunity through our conversations and through our organizing, right, to begin to address the issues that are really facing people. And I think this issue of food insecurity is a huge one, right? So how can you believe how much a basic meal has gotten so expensive? I mean, that could be in the restaurant or at the grocery store, how much does it cost you know, to feed people these days, right? The number of people waiting to get their weekly allotments is rising, right? How do those people get food, you know? Or even the fixed incomes, right? I mean, that's huge, and that one is going to get bigger
Hmm.
in short order, right? Because I think these guys are like trying to kill off a whole bunch of people, man. To be honest with you, I mean,
Hmm.
I just don't see how it couldn't be. Okay, so we have the opening sort of conversation, right? Then we're going to identify the problem. All right. So what injustice is it that we are facing? What are the fact that people can't eat? What is the injustice that that creates?
People are going without food and the nutrition that they need.
If you get sick,
Get sick. You can't do work as well.
Can't work.
We talk about, Hermano, you mentioned, wanting to kill off of people. Well, this is one way to do it. I mean, and hunger is a slow way of killing somebody, right? And when we say that, people will get sick, obviously we think about physically, but somebody else mentioned, like somebody with schizophrenia. Um, being in the mental health field myself, seeing what this does to a person's emotional and mental well-being when they feel that they are being penalized for retiring. They are being penalized because they have this disability and they're not able to hold a job. Um, People go into depression. It goes into all these other aspects, and we appreciate that, there's more than one aspect when we're looking at a person. but it's all of that that is impacted, and then it trickles into the family, it trickles into the community as a whole as well. I mean, the veterans, I can't even begin to tell you, the veterans, the feeling of betrayal, of, I fought for my country. I sacrificed this. My health is in poor condition because of the experience of having done X, Y, and Z. And, I'm having to fight to get what I should be getting, which is, I mean, basic human need to eat.
I yeah. I mean, if food is not a basic human right, then you know what I'm saying? I mean, you can't live without food, you know. It's like air or like water.
Yeah.
Um, okay. So the question then becomes, what are we doing about it? And when we use the word we in this context, we mean the Partido Nacional de la Raza Unida. What is the Partido doing about food insecurity? We're going to we're having house meetings to build. That's right. We're going to have house meetings. Yep. We're going to have house meetings to build um, uh, a movement, a campaign
Mhm.
in our city to, excuse me, help um, end food insecurity. Now, there are people that would say, "Oh, I mean that's all you guys are going to do." I mean, I would say, "Do you have a better idea?" Um, that's really probably is what I would say back to them, but I would say it very nicely. Um, but we're gonna
Tone is
have
everything.
tone. That's right. Yeah, yeah, that's right. Tone is everything. Yes. My wife and I say that to each other a lot. Tone is everything. Um, food. And I think this piece here, like food is a human right, man. People have the right to eat. You know, people have the people have the right to be happy. They have the right to not spend every day of their life working. I mean, how much do
Mhm.
these guys need from us? You know what I'm saying? I mean, like really, because we're not really working for ourselves. I mean,
Yeah.
we're always working to make somebody else richer, you know? So I mean, it's like, I mean, how much of my life do you need from me? Do you require from me, right? And I think that these are things that we need to like start thinking about how it is that we begin to talk to people about this. So we go back through it, we come in and we say, hey, it was really nice meeting you the other day. I'm really glad that you agreed to have this meeting with me. We have the some really exciting things going on. One of the things that I've seen is just like how expensive food has become, especially even just like within the last couple of months, right? um and I mean, I'm having such a hard time believing, like when I was a kid, I went to the store one time with my grandma and we spent $100 and we got enough food and we filled up the whole car with $100. And as we were leaving the grocery store, she said, when I was your age, I would have needed a truck to
Mm.
move this much. If we had taken $100 to the grocery store, I would have needed a truck to bring all the food home that we bought. And I thought about that because Jess and I went to the grocery store the other day and we spent $100 and we just had enough. We didn't even fill the trunk. I mean, and I thought about that. Now it's just like, you see the progression of it. And at a certain point you have to wonder how are people eating, right? How many people are going to bed hungry every single night, and then so you think about, you just kind of flow into the second part and talking about how people are going without food and not getting the nutrition they need. What sort of impact does that have on young children? I mean, most people, by the time they get to a certain age, they have kids, most people, right? Um, and we see that, right? I mean, there are things, I mean, I probably would go hungry for a long time, but if my kids started to go hungry, I don't know, man. That's a whole different ball game, right? So, people are getting sick from lack of nutrition. They can't work. I mean, we live in a society that requires us to work to survive, right? Hunger, like Vero said, that's a slow death, man. I mean, that's a terrible, terrible thing. Starvation, being hungry. Just being hungry is terrible, right? I mean, I can't even imagine what starvation is like. Penalized, people are penalized into retiring. They're penalized for disability. Um, and all of those things trickle into the families, right? And so, as you're going through this and you're talking to them, what you're going to want to do is make sure that you're asking them questions about these things also, right? Because what we don't want to do is create a monologue situation. What we really want to do is we want to get them as invested in the conversation as we possibly can. So writing these things out like this helps us to have a blueprint for the conversation that's going to be taking place with these different individuals. And we know I'm going to ask them a question here. I'm going to ask them what they think about that. And then we get down to the end and we say we're building a movement, a house through house meetings, right? Um, and we're building a movement in our city to end food insecurity. That's our goal. The goal of the Partido Nacional de la Raza Unida in San Antonio, in Long Beach, right, in Phoenix, in the Verde Valley, in Fresno, in Flagstaff, is to end food insecurity. It's the same goal in Grand Rapids, Michigan, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, in Sioux City, North Dakota, all the places that we have members, right? Our goal is to think about how to end food insecurity, how to build the party, right? How to how to do all of these different things. So then we
Could I could I
go,
add interject something there, Armando?
yeah. Go ahead,
Okay,
sister.
so on the piece where what is the partido doing, right, in regards to food insecurity? And so when we say we are having house meetings to build a movement or a campaign in our city to help end food insecurity, I'm just kind of thinking of, some of the responses that we may get to that, like how you said, um, and I think you said, what was your response? You said we should tell them, do you have a better idea or something?
No, I don't think you should tell them that. I just, that's probably what I would say. I would say, well, I'm open to suggestions.
With
That's,
the greatest tone of voice, right? But
yes.
no, I was just kind of thinking about that, and I thought about my landlord, who is also now my neighbor. We live in a duplex, and he's Raza, and he's a retired veteran, and he's looking for work. He's an older man. He goes, I go to the VA. They tell me, go to these places. You're getting depressed. You need to interact with other people your age. And he says, I don't want to go play cards and bingo, and I want to work. Like, I still have some health within me and some vitality, and I want to put my hands and my body to work. I want to do something productive. And so I'm just thinking, that this man, in his depression that he is struggling with, he's not hungry. He's not going hungry. He does have resources to be able to feed himself. He had to downgrade from where he was living because of the cost of it. And
Yeah.
so now he's living here next door to me. But this man who is struggling with depression, and whose wife passed away and now lives by himself, um, is able to cook. He cooks for himself, but he has nobody to share the food with. And it breaks his heart to like throw food away, and he can only eat so much, right? So he literally comes, he knocks on my door, and he feeds Nayeli and I. Um, and I'm just thinking of, what a house meeting would look like with him included in this.
Yep.
That we have people across the street from me, on the side of me, who hardly come out of their home because they are scared shitless that immigration is going to pick their asses up because they're not fully through the process or what have you, and so they don't come out of their home for fear, right? um but here I have this gentleman who he doesn't have that anxiety and that fear, but he has sympathy about the man across the street, but we're not talking to each other. And so what a house meeting could do if we all got together,
Yep.
where it's not just, because Alfredo would feed the block. He really would. And he can do that because he makes some really good food. I would add that.
Yeah.
But then somebody would also say, Alfredo, necesito que me arreglen el patio. I have some, you know, wood panels that need to get replaced, and he would be ecstatic. So it would be, I'm just thinking of that. What comes out of those house meetings is that we're building community. And then of course, as partido members, we are always going to think of the bigger picture in building the party. But how do you make yourself relevant? That's how you bring people together, because that's what we're not doing. We think of like the Black Panthers, and when they had they were feeding the kids, and there was education and there was empowerment and identity in I just like completely see that's what comes together when we come together. And especially as the point that we were making earlier, in somebody's home.
Yep. That is, you got it. This is, yeah, you got it, sister. I mean, there is, I think, no greater contribution that we can make than to build community, right? To get people talking, to get them working together. I mean, the situations that we face now, the fear that's so palpable
Yeah.
in our society today is based on isolation. It's based on alienation. Um,
Hmm.
you know, Marx wasn't wrong, right? I mean, he wasn't right about everything, but he wasn't wrong about everything either, you know.
Right.
And I mean, that isolation, that alienation, that we feel, right, that we experience daily. I mean, we have to find ways to break through that, right? Which is one of the reasons why with the Partido that we opened up the way that we did, right? Because we can't we don't want as an organization to create separation, right? There has to be a way to include as many people as possible and still accomplish the things that we need to accomplish, right? And I think that these are the kinds of conversations that allow us to do that. And so the more that we can get people involved in these conversations, right, the more that we can help them to understand the necessity of being intentional in terms of social change, right? Um, but that's what you just, I mean, that's a prime example. How do you get people to the house meeting, right? How do you get them talking about it? How do you get them and Alfredo together? You know what
Yeah.
I mean? That's
Yeah.
yeah.
And so, like, so thinking of that question and reflecting on that personally for myself here, um, I speak to all of them.
Mhm.
One-on-ones is my strength. But I'm also a weaver. And so, so making that happen would not be that difficult, actually.
Yeah.
Sounds like a like our first house meeting.
Yeah.
I just would have to say, and talk to Alfredo. I mean, it's so saddening, like right now I pulled up to the house and he's sitting outside, and he just, every time I see him, he just looks more and more depleted emotionally, and he's losing hope. And we see him, we all see him, we all see Alfredo. And Alfredo does wonderful things for people in this community. But, and it's not about necessarily coming to Alfredo's rescue, but more so building that collective power within our community, because we're all so enmeshed in our own struggle that we're not coming together. But if we just bring the people together, that magic happens.
Yeah.
I call it magic, but it's the magic of the people. It's the magic of organizing, of being intentional, knowing what it is that we're trying to achieve. So yeah.
JJ, were you going to say something?
No, I'm sorry. I honestly started coughing, but it is like just hearing your story right now, Veronica, it just feels beautiful and
Yeah.
empowering. And so you mentioned like how like, or Veronica, maybe you mentioned it like the Panther Party. And I think
Mhm.
that's where my mind is like connecting that gap of why we are building a campaign or why we are building a movement. Because with them, everything was just such a local action. They started the free lunch program for kids, but that wasn't started because people across the nation all got together. It was really like, okay, this small community in Chicago found a need, and then they started it, and then it grew from there and it grew from there. So these small actions really do have a strong ripple effect, and
Yeah.
it's really cool to see even in this meeting.
Yeah. No, you're
Yeah.
right. The small actions are profound. There's no question, especially when you can magnify them, right, into different communities. So we're gonna make the ask. I want to kind of keep us on track.
Mhm.
Um, so we're gonna make the ask, and we're gonna say, hey, let's do a house meeting, right? And then they're gonna ask what that is, and you're gonna say, well, together, you and I are gonna invite about 5 people. I would say just say 5 people. Don't say 5 to 8. Don't just say 5. Because whatever number you give people, that's the number that they'll shoot for. If you say 3 to 5, they'll invite 3 people. If you say 4 or 5, they'll invite 4 people. If you say 5 people, they'll invite 5 people. Um, I,
And oftentimes the people that are invited want to bring somebody.
yeah, oftentimes they do. Um, but
Yeah.
try keep it small.
Yeah.
Trust me on this one. Keep it small.
Yes. Yeah.
And then when those people get there, make sure that you sign them up, right? I mean, the best thing that can happen at your house meeting is that every one of those people agrees to have a house meeting. That's the best thing that could happen, right?
Mm.
Because then what happens is that it begins to grow exponentially, right? Um, and then after we've done house meetings for 7 or 8 weeks, then we'll have a citywide meeting, right? Because by that time, you've talked to hundreds of people, or you trained other people to do house meetings, right? Like Alfredo sounds like somebody who might be really good at doing house meetings with people. And sounds like somebody who has the time on his hands
Hmm.
to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like and would do it, right? Because he sees on some level, he must see the necessity of community action, or he wouldn't even bring you guys food. You know, like he understands that. I think that
Right.
thing about sharing, right? So, we have them, we set them up for the house meeting. We give them the whole thing. We're gonna help you. I'll do the talking. This is what's gonna happen. And then the other thing I can tell you is this: keep it to an hour. I mean, even if people want to stay longer and talk, that's fine, but make it really clear that the hour's up and that's the house meeting. And, we can chill and we can hang out and, talk or do whatever, but the house meeting's over. And I think I have found over the years that that's actually pretty important is to let people know. Keep it to an hour. Let people know. Um, okay. And so then I would say let's do this. We got about 30 minutes left. Why don't we take about 10 minutes and everybody just write out a little script, like a little rap about how you would have a one-on-one with people, and then let's just come back together and read them to each other. And I'm pretty sure we'll be at our time by then. How does that sound?
Sounds good.
10 minutes. All right. I'll set a timer. I'll see you guys back in 10 minutes.
Okay.
All right. So who wants to share?
I'll go first.
Okay.
Okay. Hopefully I understood the assignment correctly. You will let me know if I did not. Um, okay, so I have really enjoyed the opportunity to share a bit with you today about the Partido Nacional de la Raza Unida. The issue of food insecurity affects all of us on various levels, and you have brought up some very real struggles and mentioned how it's affected people that you know. How would you like to host a meeting at your home with 5 people where we can have this conversation and discuss how we can come together to implement some practical solutions? It would be no more than an hour, and I would be there to help you every step of the way. If this is something that you would like to do, we can look at our schedules and figure out a time that works, something
I,
to that effect.
yeah, I think that's great. That's yeah. There you go.
Did I understand the assignment?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, that's the basic pitch, right? Let's do this and there's more like you have a conversation that kind of builds
Yeah,
up
yeah.
to it, but I mean that's yeah, yeah, good job. All right.
I'm thinking of like, like this past weekend when we were at the Cesar Chavez March. Very rarely are you speaking to just like one person, when you're like at these kind of gatherings, right? So for example, there was 2 people that had come up, they were marching together and we had a conversation. And they brought up different things that were going on in the South Side that is affecting their community. But I'm just thinking of, how that conversation we really could have moved forward in this direction if it had been very intentional to do that. But that was already 2 people that were there that were part of that conversation. And so then and in that instance it would be, I would love for you to, to get together with you two and maybe 3 other people. It just makes it more manageable. Like the 2 are already here, we're already having this conversation. And you mentioned, because most people will mention somebody, naturally we think about somebody else that's been affected, and we usually share that. So it just kind of makes it, I think, to where the person feels like, okay, this is not a big deal. Like we can make this happen.
Yes. I think that the more that you can help people feel like it's not a big deal, like we
Yeah.
can do this, or it's not going to be a whole bunch of extra work for them,
Yes.
then
Yes.
yes, yeah, I think that is absolutely 100% correct. 100. Yeah, that's good. Does anybody else have one they'd like to share with us?
Veronica, I feel like yours is so like official and well polished. I'm gonna attempt this, but I feel like mine is gonna come off a little different. Same but different, I guess. Um, so I start off with thank you for speaking with me today and allowing me to discuss the Partido Unido. Right now we are really focused on food insecurity. The cost for one person has been getting ridiculous, let alone how does a family support themselves. We really need to
Mhm.
focus on how people are getting their nutrition to live. Right now, with the Partido, we're building community through house meetings and learning of how we can support one another. Would you be willing to host one of these house meetings with us? With only 5 people and just 1 hour, we'll be able to build connections, and I'll be there to help you every step of the way.
Yes,
That was great.
that was good. Yes,
Yeah,
that was great.
Thank
yeah,
you.
that was very good.
It
Very, very good.
flowed.
Yeah.
That I feel like was kind of the hard part. Like I haven't gone in person with you guys any like campaigning, but I feel like I have such a difficulty with like how does this sound like a normal conversation with people? But I guess mostly you're just trying to get your point across.
Hmm.
Well, I think it's like Vero said earlier, it's all about the tone.
Oh yeah, huh.
I mean it really is. I mean because the other thing is that they don't know that you've been practicing it. right? Like to them, this is the first time they've heard you say it. Now, if they get involved, like after a couple weeks, they'll be like, "Bro, you say that to everybody." Because I've had people say that to me so many times. It's hilarious. They're like, "Do you just say the same thing over and over again?" And I told them, "Yeah." I said, "How else do you think it sounds so natural, right? Or so like so awesome?" That's actually what I tell them. How else do you think it sounds so awesome? It's because I just repeat myself constantly, or I go around saying it inside my head. You know, no, that was
It's
really good.
consistency, hermano. It's consistency.
Yeah, it's practice,
Practice,
consistency, all that.
consistency,
Yep. Yeah, it is. It's all of those things. So,
confidence, and confidence as well.
yeah,
Because, like, because otherwise, then what is the difference between the partido if all we're doing is just having a conversation and there was no next, you
step.
know,
Yep,
no next step?
that's
Yeah,
right.
and then we're just having conversations. We're a social club at that point,
Yeah,
like, yeah,
yep, absolutely. Well, we
yeah,
got
that was really good.
we got time for one more if anybody's got one or they want to just kind of throw something out at us. But if not, that's okay also. Um, we got 10 minutes. Are there any questions or last minute thoughts about this in particular, this topic, or just sort of the sessions in general? Oh, thanks, Shista. I'm glad. I'm glad it was helpful.
And we're there. Yeah, would you say, hermano? We're definitely there to be able to start. So we use the example of like the food insecurities, right? But I mean, really, when we're speaking with people, whatever is like the biggest thing that they bring up is what we're grabbing onto. We're going to have a position about everything. We have a position about everything that affects our people.
Yeah.
So so yeah, right? Is that where we're at? We can totally move forward with the house meetings.
I think that yes, you can absolutely move forward with the house meetings. I think even if you just simply do house meetings that are centered on what is the Raza Unida party, you know? Um, I mean, it could just be that to begin with, right?
Okay. Hmm.
Uh, you know, this is an old way of
Yeah.
organizing. This comes all out of, Industrial Areas Foundation, out of Chicago, the CSO, the labor movement. This is, I mean, from Dolores Huerta's own mouth, I heard her say that this is how they built the union. Um, or how they built it into the force that it was, right? I mean, I heard her say that. I mean, we were there and she was teaching us how to do that. Um, so I think that it was very funny to me when Obama ran for president the first time, and I
Hmm.
was I was listening to these uh news commentators talk, and they were like, "Yeah, he's doing something that nobody's ever done before, blah blah,
Oh
this
God.
whole house meeting thing." And I was just like, "What is this fool talking about?" Right? And so I mean, a guy won president of the United States, partially based on, this strategy, right? It is a powerful strategy that involves us that requires us to share our stories, and to have other people share their stories with us. It is a conversation based, um, strategy, right? That allows people to participate, right? This is I mean, this is democracy, right? And it's we need this right now more than
Yes.
a long time in this country, right? I mean, we need people to be able to speak and to speak their minds and to speak without fear. Um, and yeah, so we've got a long ways to go. I think there's a lot of work that we can do, a lot of good work that we can do for the party, and I mean really just for the entire nation, to be real
Yeah.
honest with you, in terms of helping people to regain their voice, right? So, all right, cool.
Great
Okay, so
training.
Next week, I'll be in Albuquerque. So we probably won't do this next week, but I'll see you guys the week after. I'll send out a notice, okay?
All right. You
All
all
right.
have a powerful time out there.
Yeah. And well, it's going to be a lot of fun. And JJ, I just want you to know I'm going to be sending you an email.
Oh, yes.
I talked with those three young women and they're all very eager to meet you.
Awesome. Wonderful. That's great. Yeah. Send me an email and then we'll connect on like when I can get with them, hopefully soon.
Great. All right. I'll see you all later.
Enjoy the rest of your weekend, everyone.
Yeah. I will, Shista. All right. Bye.
Bye.